The desert night swallowed sound. In Tijuana, 3 miles from the border crossing where American headlights traced desperate patterns against the dark, David Reynolds bled into the sand. 45 years old, 2 decades of private military contracts. Blackwater, then independent. A man who had extracted diplomats from Beirut, corporate executives from cartel strongholds, witnesses from war zones where governments feared to tread. Tonight, the sand beneath him was warm with his own blood, and the irony was not lost on him. The extractor could not extract himself. His hands shook as he pulled the photograph from his tactical vest. The plastic sleeve was already crimson at the edges. Inside, frozen in a moment from better days, his family smiled back at him. Maya, 16 years old, strawberry blonde hair catching summer light. Elena, his wife, elegant even in a casual moment, her diplomat's poise never quite leaving her. They had been at Pike Place Market. Maya had laughed at the fishmongers throwing salmon. It had been a Sunday. It had been perfect. The photo was torn down the middle now, a jagged line splitting their family in two. His side, their side. He folded it carefully, hands trembling, leaving a smear of red across his daughter's face. The watch on his wrist had stopped. 11:47, the exact moment the bullets had found him. David Reynolds knew about time. In his profession, you learned that time was the only resource that mattered. You could buy weapons, hire men, negotiate terms, but time, once spent, never returned. His watch, a gold Omega his father had given him when he graduated from the service, had marked every important moment of his life. Maya's birth, his wedding, the day he signed his first contract. Now it marked his death, the second hand frozen mid-sweep like a finger pointing at nothing. He unscrewed the back casing with fingers that no longer obeyed properly. Inside, a hollow space, just large enough. He pressed the folded photograph in, then sealed it. His blood made the metal slick. He wrapped the watch in a waterproof pouch from his vest, the kind designed to protect electronics during water insertions. His breathing was shallow now. The sucking chest wound had been manageable 10 minutes ago. Now it sang with each breath. On the back of the photograph, before folding it, he had written in ballpoint pen, the ink fighting against the blood. The words were simple. Maya, promise me. Find the lily. Trust the watch. Love conquers all. Dad, the lily. She would understand eventually. She was smart, his daughter. Smarter than he had been at 16. Smarter than he was now, dying in the sand because he had trusted the wrong man. Because he had believed that even monsters could choose redemption. Don Moretti had been 40 years old when they first shook hands. 1995. The Gilded Lily restaurant in downtown Seattle, all white tablecloths and Italian wine that cost more per bottle than David made in a month. Don had looked him in the eye and said, I want out. Help me build something clean. Something my son can inherit without shame. David had believed him. For 10 years, they had worked together. Don transitioning out of the life, using his connections to build legitimate businesses. Shipping companies, real estate, tech startups before Seattle became the city that Amazon built. And it had been working. It had been real. Until Nikolai Sokolov whispered poison in Don's ear. The Russian had been 18 when they first met, a kid playing informant for Elena's State Department operation. By 28, he had built his own empire on the corpse of his mentor's trust. He had convinced Don that David was the threat, that Elena was using them both, that the only way to survive was to strike first. Don Moretti had struck, and David Reynolds, who had survived Fallujah and Kandahar and a dozen other places where men went to die, was bleeding out in Mexican sand because he had believed in redemption. The sound of boots on gravel. Multiple men. Flashlights cutting through the dark. David tried to reach for his sidearm, but his hand would not close. The Glock lay 3 feet away, might as well have been 3 miles. He could hear voices now. Spanish, Russian, English with a Moscow accent. Nikolai Sokolov stepped into the circle of light, younger than David by almost 20 years, but with eyes that had seen just as much darkness. More, maybe. David had killed when necessary. Nikolai killed because he enjoyed the mathematics of it, the way power accumulated when the right people stopped breathing. Still alive. Nikolai's voice carried neither surprise nor satisfaction, just observation. Tougher than Don thought. He said you would be dead by now. David's mouth tasted of copper and sand. He tried to speak, but blood filled his throat. He coughed, and the movement sent lightning through his chest. When he could breathe again, the words came out wet. Tell her, tell Maya, the lily knows the truth. Nikolai crouched down, careful to keep his expensive Italian shoes out of the blood pooling in the sand. The Lily, you mean the restaurant, where your little partnership was born. He smiled, and it was the smile of a man who has already won and is now simply counting his winnings. Don Moretti will burn it down, erase every trace of your naive little dream. There will be nothing left for your daughter to find. You are wrong. David coughed again, and this time he tasted something worse than blood, something final. You do not understand. The Lily is not a place. It is an idea, and ideas do not burn. Philosophical even at the end, Nikolai stood. I almost respect that, but respect does not pay for empires, Mr. Reynolds. Fear does. And dead men inspire fear far better than live ones ever could. He nodded to his men. They raised their weapons. David Reynolds closed his eyes and thought of his daughter, 16 years old and smiling at flying salmon. He thought of his wife, who had risked everything for a chance at a better world. He thought of the watch wrapped in waterproof plastic, carrying its burden of blood and truth and love. The shots, when they came, sounded like thunder. Or maybe that was just the storm finally breaking. The desert swallowed the sound as it swallowed everything eventually. Blood and bone and the last breath of a man who had believed in redemption. The watch, sealed in its pouch, ticked on for another 3 seconds before the mechanism finally surrendered. 11:47 and 18 seconds. Frozen. Waiting. Like a promise carved in golden blood. 10 years. The thought was his last. 10 years and she will come looking. 10 years and she will understand. The lily blooms where truth and lies meet. Then darkness, absolute and final. The gunshot echoed in the underground range, rolling back from concrete walls like approaching thunder. Maya Reynolds squeezed the trigger again, and another 9mm hollow point punched through the center mass of the paper target 30 feet downrange. Again, and again, and again. The rhythm was meditative, mechanical, a prayer spoken in brass and cordite. 3 a.m., Seattle slept above her, the city's rain tapping gentle fingers on the streets while she practiced ending lives with the precision her father had taught her. 50 rounds through the Glock 19. All center mass, all kill shots. The target at the end of the lane looked like it had been attacked by an angry wasp with a geometry degree. Every hole within a 3-inch circle, right where the heart would be beating if paper could bleed. She set the weapon down on the bench, hands steady despite the adrenaline still singing in her veins. The watch on her wrist caught the fluorescent light. Gold, Ild, stopped at 11:47. She checked it obsessively, a habit born from a decade of questions without answers. The second hand frozen mid-sweep like time itself had given up. Maya was 26 now. 10 years since the phone call, 10 years since the military liaison officer had appeared at their door with his pressed uniform and practiced sympathy. Your father, he had said, as if David Reynolds had been his father too, as if those words could somehow soften what came next. Killed in action, training accident in Beirut, no remains recovered. We are sorry for your loss. The lies had been professionally delivered. Maya had been 16 and smart enough to know that training accidents did not leave no remains. That her father's last contract had been in Mexico, not Beirut. That the government that sent the liaison officer was the same government that employed her mother. And secrets protected secrets the way wolves protected their pack. She had spent the last 10 years learning to hunt wolves. The range was private, invitation only, the kind of place that did not advertise and did not ask questions as long as your credit card cleared. Maya paid cash. She had been coming here 3 times a week for the past 6 months, ever since she moved to Seattle, ever since she found the photograph. It had arrived in an unmarked envelope, slipped under her apartment door in Portland. No return address, no note. Just half of a torn photograph showing her father, younger than she remembered him, standing with 2 other men in front of a restaurant. The Gilded Lily, according to the ornate script on the awning behind them. Downtown Seattle, according to the Space Needle visible in the background. The men with her father had been Don Moretti and another man she did not recognize at first. Research had given her the name. Nikolai Sokolov, Russian mob, controlled most of the Eastern European organized crime from Vancouver to Portland. Dangerous, vicious, connected. And in the photograph, smiling like they were brothers. Maya had come to Seattle the next week, found a job as a waitress at the first restaurant that would hire her for cash under the table. Started watching, learning, waiting. 6 months. The Gilded Lily had been her 3rd placement. The first 2 restaurants had been wrong. Practice runs. This one felt different. The weight of history in the walls, the photographs from decades past, The way the older waiters spoke about the place like it was sacred. And 3 weeks ago, Vincent, the head waiter, had mentioned that Mr. Moretti still dined there once a month. Always the same booth, always brought his security, sometimes brought business, always tipped exactly 20%. Maya had arranged her schedule to match. She ejected the magazine from the Glock, checked the chamber, confirmed it was clear. The weapon went into its case, the case into her bag. She stripped off the ear protection and safety glasses. 3:30 a.m. now. She had a shift at 8, 4 hours to shower, check her surveillance notes, and prepare for another night of being invisible. Being invisible was a superpower, her father had told her once. She had been 8, practicing the breathing exercises he taught her, the ones that slowed your heart rate and steadied your hands. In this world, Maya, being invisible means you see everything and they see nothing. But knowing when to stop being invisible, that is survival. That is power. She understood now. For 6 months, she had been invisible at the Gilded Lily. The waitress, nobody noticed. The girl who poured water and took orders and faded into the background like elevator music. But tonight would be different. Tonight, Dante Moretti was coming to dinner. The Gilded Lily occupied a corner of 4th Avenue that real estate developers coveted the way dragons coveted gold. 4 stories of carefully restored brick, dating back to 1923 when Seattle still remembered Prohibition and the sound of jazz was considered dangerously modern. The ground floor was the restaurant. Above it, private offices that nobody talked about. Below it, wine cellars that doubled as storage for things that had nothing to do with wine. Maya arrived at 7:45, using the back entrance that staff used to avoid being seen by early arriving guests. The kitchen was already controlled chaos. Chef Marco barking orders in Italian accented English, while his sous chefs moved with the practiced precision of a surgical team. The smell was heaven. Garlic and olive oil and fresh baked bread and simmering ragu that had been cooking since dawn. Vincent stood at the host station, checking reservations on his tablet, with the intensity of a general reviewing battle plans. He looked up as Maya approached, his expression souring immediately. Vincent was 43, French-born, Seattle-raised, and convinced that Maya's mere existence lowered the restaurant's Michelin star chances. "You are late." His accent got thicker when he was annoyed, which was most of the time Maya was in his presence. "I am 15 minutes early." She kept her voice neutral, the tone of someone who had long ago given up arguing with people who had already decided not to like her. "For you, 15 minutes early is late." He gestured at her appearance. "And fix your hair. You look like you just woke up." Maya had been awake for 4 hours, but she simply nodded and headed to the staff bathroom. The mirror showed her what Vincent saw. Strawberry blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail that had seen better days. Green eyes that carried shadows no 26-year-old should have. The white button-down shirt and black slacks that comprised the server uniform, worn but clean. She redid the ponytail, splashed cold water on her face, checked the watch. 7:52, 8 minutes until service started. 22 minutes until the reservation book showed that Dante Moretti would arrive. Her reflection stared back, and for a moment she saw her father's face superimposed over her own. The same stubborn jaw, the same analytical eyes that cataloged details without conscious effort. The same expression of someone preparing to walk into a fight they might not win but refusing to walk away. "Promise me," his note had said. "Find the lily. Trust the watch. Love conquers all." She had found the lily. She was trusting the watch, wearing it every day despite the fact that it had not worked in a decade. The last part, love conquers all, she was still working on. Love had conquered nothing so far except her mother's mind, eating away at memories like acid on metal. The bathroom door opened, and another server, Jessica, stuck her head in. "Vincent wants you on station 4, VIP section." Maya's pulse quickened, but her expression stayed neutral. "Station 4, the private alcove, where Dante Moretti always sat." "Got it." She followed Jessica out into the dining room, now transformed from the empty space she had walked through minutes ago. Candlelight flickered on white tablecloths. Crystal gleamed. The walls were decorated with photographs, black and white images of Seattle's history. Ships in the harbor, the first buildings downtown. And there, in a corner she had studied dozens of times, a photograph from 1995. The Gilded Lily on opening night after its last renovation. A crowd of well-dressed people, and in the background, barely visible unless you knew to look, 3 men shaking hands. Don Moretti, 40 years old and radiating power. David Reynolds, 25 and still believing the world could be saved. And Elena Reynolds, 38, her State Department credentials hidden but her intelligence officer's posture unmistakable. A partnership, an attempt at redemption, a dream that had died in Tijuana sand 10 years later. Maya tore her eyes away from the photograph and checked her section. 4 tables, all empty. She spent the next 15 minutes doing the small tasks that filled the time before service. Folding napkins, checking water glasses for spots, arranging silverware with the precision Vincent demanded. At 8:15, the first guests arrived, a couple celebrating an anniversary. She seated them, brought water, took their wine order, moved through the motions with practiced ease. At 8:22, the front door opened, and everything changed. The black Cadillac Escalades pulled up outside like a presidential motorcade, 3 of them, their combined value exceeding what Maya would make in 5 years of waitressing. Rain sheeted down, turning 4th Avenue into a river of reflected neon and streetlight. The doorman, an ex-cop named Robert, who had seen everything twice, moved smoothly to the first vehicle with an umbrella that cost more than his suit. The back door opened. Dante Moretti stepped out into the rain, 6'2". Broad shoulders that strained against a charcoal suit cut by someone who understood that clothes were architecture and the body was the building. Dark hair with threads of silver at the temples, even though he was only 36. Eyes the color of storm clouds over Puget Sound, gray and cold and seeing everything. But it was not the physical presence that made the restaurant staff straighten unconsciously. It was the weight of authority he carried, the kind that came from growing up knowing that your word could end careers or lives with equal ease. Don Moretti's son, the man who had inherited an empire built on fear and was trying, against all odds and expectations, to transform it into something that could survive daylight scrutiny. Behind him came the entourage. 2 bodyguards first, moving with the efficient precision of men who had seen combat and remembered every lesson. Bruno and Vince, their names were, according to Maya's research. Ex-military, loyal, competent, armed certainly, though the weapons were concealed well enough that casual observers would miss them. Then Marcus Vale, 52 years old, silver hair, wire-frame glasses, tailored raincoat that probably cost more than Maya's car. The consigliere, the advisor, the man who had been with Don Moretti for 30 years and had transitioned to serving the son without apparent difficulty. His expression was neutral, but Maya had watched enough surveillance footage to recognize the way his eyes never stopped moving, cataloging threats and exits and opportunities with the same unconscious efficiency she employed. Father Michael came next, 65 years old, his priest's collar visible beneath a simple black jacket. The family's spiritual advisor, present at every major decision, every turning point. His presence suggested this dinner was more than just food. And then, last, a small figure clutching a stuffed rabbit and wearing a dress that was slightly too large. Sophia Moretti, 8 years old, Dante's niece, orphaned 6 months ago, when her father Julian died in a car accident that Maya's research suggested was anything but accidental. Now Dante's ward, his responsibility. The reason, according to some of the intelligence Maya had gathered, that he had accelerated his efforts to legitimize the family business. The child looked terrified, not of the rain or the restaurant or the strangers, just terrified in the general way of someone whose world had shattered and was still trying to figure out if the pieces would ever fit back together. Vincent materialized at the door, his displeasure at Maya forgotten in the presence of actual VIPs. "Mr. Moretti, welcome. Your usual table is prepared." Dante's voice was lower than Maya expected, a bass rumble that carried without effort. "No, not the private alcove tonight. Sophia wants to see the restaurant. We will sit in the main room." Marcus stepped forward, concern tightening his expression. "Boss, security would be better if we maintained some separation from the general dining area." "She is 8, Marcus." Dante looked down at the child beside him, and his expression softened in a way that transformed his face from intimidating to almost human. "She deserves a normal dinner, or as normal as we can manage." Father Michael's voice was gentle but firm. "The child is still grieving, Dante. Are you certain it is wise to bring her to a place with so much history? This restaurant has seen its share of violence. My father met my mother here 35 years ago." Dante's tone brooked no argument. "Julian proposed to his wife here. This place is family legacy, not a battlefield. Sophia needs to understand where she comes from. The good parts, not just the parts that end in funerals." He looked around the dining room and his gaze swept over Maya without pausing, dismissing her as part of the furniture. Vincent was already moving, reconfiguring the seating arrangement, gesturing to a booth near the kitchen that offered some separation from other diners, but maintained visibility to the main room. Maya felt her heart hammering against her ribs, but her hand stayed steady as she checked her section assignments on the small tablet servers used. Station 4 had just been reassigned. The booth near the kitchen, her section. She was going to serve Dante Moretti dinner. 10 years of preparation, 6 months of surveillance, countless hours studying everything about this man, his family, his business, his routines. And now he was 20 feet away, settling into a booth with a traumatized child and advisors who looked like they expected an attack at any moment. Vincent appeared beside her, his voice dropping to a hiss. Table 12. Do not embarrass me. Do not embarrass this restaurant. Mr. Moretti is not just a customer. He is legacy. He is history. You will be perfect or you will be gone. Understand? Understood. She picked up a water pitcher and approached the table, every step measured, every movement designed to be forgettable. In her father's voice, the mantra he had taught her. You are air. You are wallpaper. You are the sound of rain that nobody really hears. You are invisible. Dante was helping Sophia out of her coat, his movements careful, almost tender. The little girl clutched her stuffed rabbit tighter, her eyes wide as she took in the restaurant's elegant interior. Marcus and Father Michael settled on either side of Dante, creating a protective barrier. The bodyguards took up positions at adjacent tables, close enough to intervene, but far enough to maintain the illusion of a normal family dinner. Maya reached the table and set down water glasses with hands that did not shake, despite the adrenaline singing through her system. This close, she could see details her surveillance had missed. The faint scar on Dante's left hand, curved like a crescent moon. The way his suit jacket hung slightly heavier on the right side, suggesting a shoulder holster. The weariness in his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and decisions that left marks. Good evening. Her voice was neutral, professional, forgettable. May I start you with water? Dante barely glanced up. Yes, thank you. She poured, the motion smooth and practiced. Sophia watched the water fill the glass with the intensity of a child trying to focus on anything except the grief that lived behind her eyes. When Maya reached her glass, the little girl spoke, her voice small but clear. That is a pretty watch, miss. My daddy had a watch like that. Time stopped. Maya's hand froze over Sophia's glass for just a fraction of a second before training reasserted control, and she completed the pour. But Dante had noticed. His head came up, and for the first time, he actually looked at her. Really looked. His storm gray eyes tracked from her face to her wrist to the gold omega that had stopped ticking a decade ago. Where did you get that watch? His voice was casual, but there was something underneath. Recognition, maybe, or curiosity. Maya's prepared story came out smoothly, a lie so close to truth that it felt honest. It was my father's. He passed away. The table went quiet. Sophia's eyes filled with sudden tears, the kind that came when someone else's loss reminded you of your own. Marcus leaned forward slightly, his analyst mind clearly working through calculations Maya could only guess at. Father Michael's expression softened with automatic sympathy. Dante stared at the watch for another long moment before his eyes returned to Maya's face. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of someone who understood loss intimately. I am sorry for your loss. Losing a father is something no child should experience, no matter how old they are when it happens. He looked at Sophia as he said it, and the little girl reached for his hand. The gesture was automatic, seeking comfort from the one stable presence in her shattered world. Dante took her hand gently, his expression a mixture of love and helplessness that Maya recognized. The look of someone thrust into parenthood without warning and terrified of failing. An awkward silence settled over the table. Maya stood there, water pitcher in hand, caught between the professional need to continue her duties and the human impulse to acknowledge shared grief. In that moment, Dante Moretti was not a mob boss. He was just a man trying to comfort a child who had lost everything. Marcus broke the silence, his voice carrying an edge Maya had not expected. How long have you worked here, miss? The question sounded innocent, but Maya recognized an interrogation when she heard one. She met his eyes directly, showing neither fear nor defiance. Just the blank professionalism of someone accustomed to being questioned by people who thought they mattered more than she did. 3 months, sir. And before that? I moved to Seattle 6 months ago. Worked at 2 other restaurants before this one. From where? Maya allowed a flicker of annoyance to cross her face, the natural response of someone whose personal history was being probed without cause. Portland, is there a problem? Dante raised his hand slightly, a gesture that silenced Marcus without words. He was still looking at Maya, and now there was something else in his expression. Not quite suspicion, but awareness. The recognition that something about this interaction felt different from the 100 other times waitresses had served him water. "What is your name?" he asked. "Maya. Just Maya. Maya Reynolds, sir." If the name meant anything to him, he did not show it. But Maya thought she saw something flicker in Marcus's eyes, gone too quickly to be certain. They would run the name through databases she knew, check backgrounds, look for connections. It did not matter. Maya Reynolds had not been David Reynolds' daughter on paper for 10 years. The identity she used now was clean, built carefully over months of preparation. "Well, Maya Reynolds," Dante's tone softened slightly. "Thank you for your sympathy and your service. We will need a few minutes to decide on our order." "Of course, take your time." She moved away from the table with the smooth efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times, hyper-aware of the eyes she could feel on her back. When she glanced back from the server station, Dante was leaning close to Father Michael, speaking in tones too low to carry. Marcus had his phone out, fingers moving across the screen with purpose. The bodyguards had not moved, but their attention had sharpened. She had been noticed. After 6 months of perfecting invisibility, Dante Moretti had actually seen her. The question was whether that was progress or disaster. Her watch gleamed in the candlelight, stopped at 11:47, carrying secrets only she understood. "Trust the watch," her father had written. She was trusting it, but trust was a currency that spent quickly, and she had the distinct impression that the price of truth was about to get very, very high. The gunshot through the restaurant window came at 9:37, precisely 1 hour and 15 minutes after Dante Moretti had noticed Maya Reynolds existed. The bullet did not kill anyone. It was not designed to. The shot was a message delivered with the precision of a professional who understood that fear was more effective than death when you wanted someone to make mistakes. The glass exploded inward in a shower of crystalline rain, and the brick that followed carried a note wrapped in waterproof plastic. "Moretti, your time is up. VV for Volkov, for Nikolai Sokolov, who had been born Nikolai Volkov in Moscow before he decided that changing names was easier than changing reputations. V for vengeance, perhaps? Or violence? Or the void that opened when empires collided and the strong devoured the weak." The restaurant erupted into controlled chaos. Guests screaming, chairs scraping, Vincent shouting in French-accented English for everyone to remain calm while simultaneously diving behind the host station like a man who had seen combat and remembered every lesson. The bodyguards moved immediately, Bruno covering Dante and Sofia, while Vince positioned himself between the shattered window and the booth, weapon drawn but held low against his thigh. Maya's reaction was instinctive and completely wrong for a waitress who had spent 3 months pouring water and taking orders. She scanned the street outside in a tactical sweep, identifying the angle of fire. 11 o'clock, rooftop across 4th Avenue, approximately 200 yards. Single shooter, suppressed weapon based on the muted crack that had preceded the glass breaking. Not an assassination attempt. A warning shot placed with enough precision to make a point without making corpses. Her body moved before her brain caught up, positioning herself between Sofia and the window, hands already reaching for the child even as Dante was doing the same. Their eyes met across the table, and in that frozen moment of shared crisis, something passed between them. Recognition, understanding, the knowledge that they had both made the same calculation and arrived at the same priority. Protect the child. Everything else was secondary. "Kitchen exit." Maya's voice cut through the chaos with the authority of someone accustomed to giving orders in situations where hesitation meant death. "Follow me, now." Dante stared at her for a heartbeat, torn between suspicion and pragmatism. His mouth opened to ask how a waitress knew about tactical positioning and escape routes. Then another shot punched through what remained of the front window, and pragmatism won. "Everyone down!" He grabbed Sofia, who had gone rigid with terror, her stuffed rabbit falling to the floor forgotten. "Marcus, with me. Father Michael, stay low. Bruno, Vince, cover our exit." Maya was already moving, water pitcher abandoned, her body flowing through the dining room with the efficient grace of someone who had practiced room clearing in her sleep. She hit the kitchen doors at speed, shouldering through into the controlled chaos of Chef Marco's domain. Pots boiling over, timers shrieking, sous chefs frozen in confusion as their carefully orchestrated service collapsed into crisis. "Back door," Maya pointed. "Go, go, go!" Dante followed, Sofia clutched against his chest, the little girl's face buried in his shoulder. Marcus came next, his analytical mind clearly racing through calculations even as his body moved on autopilot. Father Michael brought up the rear, surprisingly spry for 65, his priest's collar stark white against the kitchen's stainless steel. They burst into the alley behind the restaurant, rain hammering down like bullets made of water instead of lead. The night smelled of garbage and wet asphalt and the particular ozone scent that Seattle rain carried when it had been falling for hours. Maya's Honda Civic sat 30 feet away, old but maintained, the kind of vehicle that blended into traffic and never drew a second glance. We are not getting in that death trap. Dante's voice carried the automatic arrogance of someone who had never ridden in anything less than a luxury sedan. The third shot answered him, sparking off the alley's brick wall exactly where his head had been before he instinctively ducked. The message was clear. The shooter had repositioned. They were not safe in the open. Dante's armored Escalades were parked out front, 100 yards of exposure away. Argue or live, your choice. Maya was already at the Civic, keys in hand, driver's door opening. Everyone in, now! Dante looked at Sophia's terrified face, at the tears streaming down her cheeks, at the way her small body trembled against him. The decision crystallized. He ran for the car. The Honda's interior was cramped with 5 people, and it smelled faintly of gun oil and the lavender air freshener that hung from the rearview mirror. Maya started the engine, which turned over immediately despite the car's age, and pulled out of the alley with the smooth acceleration of someone who knew exactly how much speed the vehicle had and how to extract every bit of it. Seatbelt. She glanced at Sophia in the rearview mirror. You too, sweetheart. The little girl's hands shook as she tried to work the buckle. Dante helped her, his movements gentle despite the adrenaline that had to be flooding his system. When he looked up, his eyes found Maya's in the mirror, storm gray meeting emerald green, and the question he asked was the one Maya had been expecting. Who the hell are you? Someone who just saved your life. She took a corner at speed, the Honda's tires barely holding the wet pavement. You are welcome. Waitresses do not move like you just moved. Marcus's voice came from the back seat, sharp with suspicion. Waitresses do not identify sniper positions. Waitresses do not know about tactical extractions. Maybe I am a very good waitress, or a very good liar. Maya checked the mirror again. One car behind them, black sedan, tinted windows, maintaining distance but not dropping back. Possible tail. She took another turn, then another, watching to see if the sedan followed. It did. We have company. Dante twisted to look back, his hand instinctively moving toward where his weapon would be if he had not checked it at the restaurant door. House rules. No guns in the Gilded Lily. Vincent had been very clear. Now Dante was unarmed in a stranger's car, with a child to protect and enemies closing in. Maya's hand went to her waistband, emerged with a Glock 19, which she passed back to Dante grip first. Safety is off, 17 rounds. Try not to shoot me by accident. He took the weapon automatically, his fingers finding the familiar grip, and stared at it like it had materialized from thin air. Where did you get this? Same place I learned to clear rooms and identify sniper hides. She accelerated hard, the Honda's engine protesting but responding. From my father, who taught me that the world is dangerous and unprepared people die young. The sedan behind them accelerated too, closing the gap. Maya watched its approach, calculating distances and velocities, timing the move she was about to make against the risk of rolling the car with a child inside. Risk assessment. Her father's voice in her head. Every action has consequences. Choose the consequences you can live with. She hit the brakes, not gently. Full pressure, anti-lock system chattering. The Honda's nose diving as momentum fought friction, and friction won. The sedan behind them did not have time to react. It slammed into their rear bumper with the crunch of metal and plastic. But Maya had anticipated the impact, had braced for it, had already planned the next 3 moves. As soon as she felt the collision, she floored the accelerator. The Honda lurched forward, tires screaming, and the sedan's driver overcorrected on the rain-slick pavement. The heavy vehicle fishtailed, lost traction, spun sideways across 2 lanes. Maya did not wait to see if it recovered. She took the next right turn at speed, then a left, then another right, burning through a mental map of Seattle's downtown streets that she had memorized over 6 months of preparation. In the back seat, Sophia whimpered. Father Michael murmured something in Latin that might have been a prayer or might have been a curse. Marcus had his phone out, fingers flying across the screen. Dante just stared at Maya's profile, the weapon still in his hand, his expression cycling through confusion and suspicion and something that might have been respect. Where are you taking us? His voice was level, controlled, but Maya heard the steel underneath. somewhere safe. I do not know you. I do not trust you. Give me one reason why I should believe you are on my side. Maya glanced at him in the mirror, met his eyes directly, and made a choice. The truth, or at least part of it. Because 6 months ago, someone sent me half of a torn photograph. It showed my father standing with Don Moretti and Nikolai Sokolov outside the Gilded Lily in 1995. My father disappeared 10 years ago on a job in Mexico. They told me it was a training accident. They lied. And I think you know why. Silence filled the car, broken only by the engine's hum and the rain drumming on the roof. Dante's face had gone very still, the kind of stillness that came before violence or revelation. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Your father. What was his name? David Reynolds. The name landed like a bomb in the confined space. Dante actually flinched. Marcus inhaled sharply. Father Michael crossed himself. Only Sophia seemed unaffected, too young to understand the weight of history that name carried. Oh God. Dante's voice cracked slightly. David Reynolds. I remember him. You could not have. You would have been, what, 16 when he died? 14. Dante's eyes had gone distant, seeing the past instead of the rain-streaked windshield. No, not 14, 6. I was 6 when the photograph was taken. But I met him again when I was 14, maybe 15. He came to our house. My father was having a dinner party. Business associates. David Reynolds was there. He taught me how to tie my shoes. A special knot, he said, the kind only operators knew. Maya's hands tightened on the wheel. Show me. Dante bent down, his movements mechanical, and demonstrated the knot on Sophia's shoe. It was complicated, efficient, distinctive. Maya had tied that same knot every morning for 26 years. Her father's knot. Proof that at least part of Dante's story was true. We were told your father betrayed us. Dante straightened, his expression haunted. That he took cartel money. That he disappeared because he could not face what he had done. My father said David Reynolds was a traitor, and we were better off with him gone. And you believed that? I was 14. What I believed did not matter. Marcus leaned forward from the back seat, his voice tight. She is lying, Dante. This is too convenient. The attack, her sudden appearance. She is working for Sokolov. This whole thing is a setup. Then why did she save us? Dante's tone carried challenge. If she is working for Nikolai, why not let the shooter finish the job? Because this is about more than killing you. This is about getting close, about finding out what you know, about manipulating you into trusting her. Marcus, the single word carried warning. Enough. But Marcus was not finished. His phone was still in his hand, and his face had gone pale in the glow of the screen. Boss, we have a bigger problem. What? Elena Reynolds, David's widow. Someone just sent you a video. It is her. They parked outside St. Catherine's Church, the old Gothic building, dark except for a single light in Father Michael's office. The priest produced a key from somewhere in his jacket and led them through a side entrance that bypassed the main sanctuary. Inside, the air smelled of incense and old wood and the particular quiet that accumulated in places where people brought their sins and their sorrows. Father Michael's office was small but comfortable, decorated with the accumulated debris of 40 years of ministry. Photographs on the walls showing baptisms and weddings and confirmations. A crucifix above the desk, simple wood, no ornamentation. Books everywhere, theology and philosophy and mystery novels stacked in precarious towers. Sophia had fallen asleep in the car, exhaustion and terror finally overwhelming her small body. Father Michael gently lifted her from Dante's arms and carried her to a couch in the corner, covering her with a blanket that smelled of mothballs and prayer. The stuffed rabbit, retrieved from the restaurant floor by quick-thinking Bruno before they fled, was tucked under her arm. Marcus set his phone on the desk and pressed play. The video quality was poor, shot on a phone or cheap camera, the lighting harsh and unflattering. But the woman in the frame was unmistakable. Elena Reynolds, 68 years old, silver hair that had once been strawberry blonde, green eyes the same shade as Maya's. Elegant, even tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse, her posture carrying the decades of diplomatic training that had shaped her into someone who could face danger without flinching. Behind her, Nikolai Sokolov stepped into frame. He looked older than in the photograph from 1995, 48 now instead of 18, but the eyes were the same, cold, calculating. The eyes of someone who had learned early that empathy was weakness and weakness was death. He wore an expensive suit, incongruous in the warehouse setting, and when he spoke, His Moscow accent had been sanded down by years in America but not eliminated. "Mr. Moretti, Miss Reynolds, I believe we have much to discuss." The camera zoomed in on Elena's face. She looked tired but unharmed, her expression defiant. When Sokolov's hand touched her shoulder, she did not flinch. "The old woman knows many secrets." His voice carried dark amusement. "Secrets worth more than money, more than power. Secrets that could destroy empires if they reach the right ears, or wrong ears, depending on your perspective." He walked around Elena's chair in a slow circle, like a professor giving a lecture. 48 hours. You have 48 hours to bring me the Moretti family ledgers from 1995. The real ones, not the sanitized versions you show the IRS. I want to know every transaction, every connection, every dirty deal Don Moretti made in that year. And in exchange, I will return Elena Reynolds alive and relatively undamaged. The camera focused on Elena again. Her eyes found the lens, and Maya could see her mother gathering herself, pushing through whatever fear she felt to deliver a message. "Maya, do not come. It is a trap. The lily knows, the lily remembers. Trust your father's words. Trust the—" Sokolov's hand covered her mouth, cutting off the warning. "Enough. She has given you your clue. Now I will give you mine." He released Elena and stepped back into full view. "Miss Reynolds, Maya, your father did not finish his last mission. I am giving you the chance to complete it. For him. Bring me the ledgers. Bring me the truth about 1995. And maybe, just maybe, your mother survives long enough to tell you what really happened in Tijuana." The video ended. Maya stood frozen, her body rigid, every muscle locked in the kind of stillness that comes before the dam breaks. Her mother, tied to a chair, held hostage. The only family she had left in the world. The only person who remembered David Reynolds as more than a name on a memorial plaque. And Maya had been so focused on her revenge, so consumed with finding answers about her father's death, that she had not protected the one person who still needed protecting. The sound that came from her throat was animal, raw, the kind of grief that bypassed language and went straight to the primal scream. She put her hand over her mouth, trying to contain it, but the sob came anyway, tearing through her chest like shrapnel. Dante moved without thinking, crossing the office in 2 strides and catching her as her knees buckled. His arms went around her, and Maya found herself pressed against his chest, her face buried in expensive fabric that smelled of rain and gunpowder and something else, something human and warm and alive. She had not cried since her father's memorial service. 10 years of rage held behind a dam built of determination and discipline. Now the dam was breaking, and she could not stop it. The sobs came in waves, each one cresting higher than the last until she was shaking with the force of them. Dante held her, did not speak, did not offer platitudes, just held her while she broke apart, his hands steady on her back, his presence solid and real when everything else felt like it was dissolving into chaos. When the storm finally passed, leaving her hollow and exhausted, she pulled back. His shirt was wet with her tears. She expected to see disgust or pity in his expression. Instead, she found understanding, the kind that came from personal experience with loss and helplessness, and the terrible knowledge that sometimes all you could do was hold on and survive. "We will get her back." His voice was quiet but certain. "I promise you. You do not make promises you cannot keep." Her own voice was wrecked, hoarse from crying. "I do, and I keep them." He used the same phrase her father had used, the one he had written on the back of the photograph. "Promise me." The coincidence was too perfect, and Maya wondered if Dante realized what he had just echoed. She pulled away, wiping her eyes, trying to reassemble the armor she had worn for a decade. Marcus was watching them with an expression that mixed suspicion and calculation. Father Michael stood by the window, his back to the room, giving them the illusion of privacy. The priest's shoulders were tight, his posture suggesting prayer or deep thought, or both. 48 hours. Maya's training was reasserting itself, pushing emotion down, bringing tactics and planning back to the surface. "He wants the 1995 ledgers. Do they exist?" Dante nodded slowly. "They exist, locked in my father's old office. I have not looked at them. When he died, I inherited everything. But Marcus advised me to leave certain archives alone until we finish the transition to legitimate business." Convenient advice. Maya's eyes went to Marcus, who stiffened. "Excuse me? You were there in 1995. You worked for Don Moretti. You were part of whatever happened. And now you want Dante to avoid looking at evidence that might implicate you." Marcus's face flushed. "You know nothing about what happened. Nothing about the choices we faced. Nothing about survival. I know my father is dead. I know your boss ordered it. I know you have been lying for 30 years. Enough. Dante's voice cut through the rising tension. Both of you, we do not have time for this. Marcus turned to him, desperation creeping into his tone. Boss, you cannot seriously be considering giving Sokolov those ledgers. They contain everything, every connection, every transaction. If he gets them, he will have leverage over every criminal organization and corrupt official in the Pacific Northwest. He will be unstoppable. And if we do not give them to him, Elena dies. Dante's expression was bleak. What would you have me do, Marcus? Choose empire over an innocent woman's life? I would have you think strategically. This is manipulation. Sokolov does not just want the ledgers. He wants you compromised. He wants you making decisions based on emotion instead of logic. He has already won that battle. Dante looked at Maya and something passed between them again. That wordless understanding. Because I am already compromised. I look at Elena Reynolds and I see my mother. I see Julian's wife. I see every woman I failed to protect. And I will not fail again. Father Michael turned from the window, his expression grave. There is a third option. We give Sokolov the ledgers, but we also ensure that copies reach the proper authorities. FBI, Justice Department. We trade one woman's life for the exposure of an entire corrupt network. We end this. All of it. Marcus shook his head violently. That ends us too. The ledgers implicate the Moretti family in crimes that would put Dante in prison for the rest of his life. Perhaps, Father Michael's voice was gentle, but better a cell than a soul so stained with innocent blood that redemption becomes impossible. You have been trying to clean the family business for 2 years, Dante. This might be the only way to truly finish what you started. The room fell silent. Maya watched Dante's face, saw the war happening behind his eyes. The weight of legacy versus the weight of conscience. The easy path of protecting himself versus the hard path of doing what was right regardless of cost. Sophia stirred on the couch, murmuring something in her sleep. Dante looked at her, at the small form wrapped in the musty blanket, and his expression softened. If I go to prison, what happens to her? I will raise her. Father Michael's response was immediate. The church will provide. She will be loved and cared for. This, I promise. And if the ledgers disappear before we can copy them? Maya's tactical mind was already working through contingencies. Sokolov has had 2 years since Don Moretti died to plan this. He knows where the ledgers are. What stops him from having someone steal them before we can make the exchange? Marcus's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, and whatever he saw there made his face go gray. Boss, we have a problem. Another one? Isabella. Marcus's voice shook. Julian's widow. She has been shot. Seattle Medical Center's ICU occupied the entire 4th floor of the hospital's North Tower, a realm of hushed voices and machines that beeped in rhythms that mimicked heartbeats but lacked their warmth. Isabella Moretti was in surgery when they arrived, the doctors working to extract a bullet from her abdomen, while Dante paced the waiting room like a caged predator, and Sophia clung to Father Michael's hand. The police were already there, asking the questions that Dante deflected with practiced ease. A robbery gone wrong. Isabella surprised an intruder. No, he did not know why anyone would target her specifically. Yes, he would call if he remembered anything useful. The detective looked skeptical but wrote down the lies anyway, both men understanding that truth was a luxury neither could afford. Marcus stood apart from the group, phone pressed to his ear, his conversation too quiet to overhear, but his body language screaming tension. Maya watched him, cataloging details. The way he kept glancing at the elevator, the way his free hands shook, the way he looked like a man watching his carefully constructed world collapse one phone call at a time. 2 hours later, a surgeon emerged, still wearing scrubs spotted with blood, her expression tired but cautiously optimistic. Isabella was stable. The bullet had missed major organs. She would recover. But she was asking to see Dante. Urgently, she had information about her husband's death. They let him in alone at first, just Dante and his sister-in-law, while the rest of them waited in the hall. Through the window, Maya could see them talking, Isabella's face pale against the white hospital sheets, Dante leaning close to hear her whispered words. Then his expression changed. Shock, anger, betrayal. He straightened, looked toward the window, looked directly at Marcus. When he emerged, his face was stone. Marcus, we need to talk. Of course, boss. What did she say? She said my brother found out you were working for Sokolov. that you have been feeding him information for months, that Julian died because he discovered your betrayal and you had him killed. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. That is not, I would never. Boss, you have to believe me. She is dying in there, Marcus. A bullet meant for someone who knew too much. And she says you were the one who told Sokolov about the ledgers. You were the one who arranged this whole setup. You were the one who sold us out. I had no choice. The words burst from Marcus like a dam breaking. You do not understand. Sokolov has had me compromised for years. Since Tijuana. Since David Reynolds. He made me pull the trigger, Dante. He stood there and made me shoot a man I respected because Don Moretti was too much of a coward to do it himself. And ever since, he has owned me. Every decision, every move. He has been blackmailing me for 10 years. Silence crashed down like a physical weight. Even the hospital sounds seemed to fade, leaving only Marcus's ragged breathing and the awful truth hanging in the air between them. Maya felt her world tilt. You killed my father. I had no choice. Everyone has a choice. Not when the alternative is dying yourself. Marcus's voice cracked. I was 32. I had a family, children. Sokolov said, do it or join Reynolds in the sand. So I did it, and I have lived with that guilt every single day since. Dante's hand moved to his waist, where his weapon would be if hospital security had not made him leave it in the car. His fingers clenched on empty air. Get out. Boss, please, let me explain. Get out before I forget that we are in a hospital and there are witnesses. Dante, I can still help. I can feed Sokolov false information. I can get Elena back. I can make this right. You cannot make this right. My brother is dead because of you. Her father is dead because of you. Everything is broken because you chose survival over honor 30 years ago. There is no making that right. There is only getting out of my sight before I kill you where you stand. Marcus looked around the hallway, seeing no allies, no escape. His eyes landed on Maya, and she saw something there that might have been remorse or might have been the panic of a drowning man. Your father's last words. Do you want to know what they were? Do not. Father Michael's voice carried warning. He said, tell Maya to forgive herself. He knew you would blame yourself for not being there, for not saving him. He wanted you to know it was not your fault. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. Forgive herself. For 10 years, she had carried the weight of being 16 and helpless while her father died alone. For 10 years, she had driven herself to become the weapon he had trained her to be, thinking that if she was just strong enough, skilled enough, ruthless enough, she could somehow retroactively save him. And he had known, had seen the future clearly enough to leave her a message, had understood that his death would break something in her that might never heal. She felt Dante's hand on her shoulder, steadying her, felt Father Michael's presence on her other side, creating a wall of support, felt Sophia's small fingers wrap around hers, the child seeking comfort even while offering it. Leave, Dante's voice was final, before I change my mind about mercy. Marcus left, walked to the elevator, pressed the button, stepped inside. The doors closed on his haunted expression, and then he was gone, leaving behind the wreckage of 30 years of lies. Maya turned to Dante, saw her own devastation reflected in his eyes, and made a decision. We need to get those ledgers, tonight, before Sokolov sends someone to steal them. Agreed, but there is something else we need first. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts, pressed dial. Agent Torres, this is Dante Moretti. We need to talk. About immunity, about witness protection, and about taking down a Russian mob boss who just made the mistake of threatening my family. Maya listened as he outlined the deal. Full cooperation, complete transparency. The Moretti family ledgers in exchange for protection for Elena, for Isabella, for Sophia, for everyone who had been caught in the crossfire of a war that started before they were born. When he hung up, she asked the question that had been building since the church. Why are you doing this? You could disappear. Take Sophia and run. Start over somewhere Sokolov cannot reach. Because your father tried to do the right thing and died for it. Because my brother tried to do the right thing and died for it. Because every time someone chooses survival over honor, the world gets a little darker. He looked at her directly, holding her gaze. I am choosing honor, whatever it costs. Maya felt something shift in her chest, a weight she had carried for so long it had become part of her skeleton. Trust. Against all logic and training and self-preservation instinct, she was beginning to trust Dante Moretti, the son of the man who had ordered her father killed, the heir to an empire built on suffering. Then we do this together. She held out her hand. Partners. He took it. His grip was firm, warm, alive. Partners. But Maya, you need to know. If we go down this path, there is no going back. Sokolov will not stop. The other families will not forgive. We will be fighting for the rest of our lives. I have been fighting for 10 years. At least now I will be fighting for something instead of just against everything. Father Michael cleared his throat. There is one more thing you should know. The ledgers. I know where your father kept the real copies, Dante. Not the ones in his office. The complete set. The ones that show everything. Where? The Gilded Lily, hidden in the foundation. Your father showed me once, years ago, when he was drunk and maudlin and terrified of dying with his sins unforgiven. He wanted someone to know, in case something happened. Maya felt puzzle pieces clicking into place. The lily knows the truth, her father's message. The restaurant was not just a symbol, it was a vault, a testament, a time capsule waiting to be opened. Then that is where we go. She checked her watch. 11:47. Always 11:47. We get the ledgers, we copy them, we set the trap for Sokolov, and we end this. Dante nodded, looked at Father Michael. Take Sophia home. Keep her safe. If anything happens to us, you know what to do. I will guard her with my life. I know you will. That is why I trust you. They left the hospital as the clock struck midnight, stepping out into rain that had not stopped since the night began. The city stretched around them, Seattle in all its wet glory, and somewhere out there, Nikolai Sokolov was waiting for them to make a mistake. Maya thought of her mother tied to a chair in a warehouse and felt rage replace grief. 46 hours left. Time enough to spring the trap. Time enough to save Elena. Time enough to finish what David Reynolds had started 30 years ago. She looked at Dante, saw determination in his storm gray eyes, and knew that whatever came next, she would not face it alone. For the first time in 10 years, she had an ally, a partner, maybe eventually something more. But first, they had to survive the night. The Gilded Lily waited, holding its secrets in the dark. The Gilded Lily stood empty at 2 in the morning, a monument to interrupted elegance. Yellow police tape still marked the entrance where the shooting had occurred 6 hours earlier. Inside, tables remained set for dinners that would never be served, wine glasses catching street light through shattered windows, creating fractured rainbows on white linen. Maya and Dante entered through the kitchen, the same route they had fled earlier. The back door lock yielded to Maya's picks in under 30 seconds, muscle memory from training sessions with her father that felt like another lifetime. The kitchen was dark, stainless steel surfaces gleaming dully, the smell of garlic and olive oil still hanging in the air like ghosts of meals past. Father Michael had given them explicit instructions. The basement, behind the wine racks. A section of foundation that looked solid but was actually hollow, sealed with a mechanism that required 2 keys. One key was on the priest's ring, provided with a warning. The other had been Don Moretti's, passed to Dante after his father's death, though Dante had never known its purpose. Until tonight. They moved through the restaurant in silence, Maya's tactical training and Dante's familiarity with the space creating a wordless choreography. He led her to a door behind the bar, unmarked, locked with a deadbolt that his key opened smoothly. Stairs descended into darkness. Dante found the light switch and ancient bulbs flickered to life, casting yellow illumination down concrete steps that had been poured in 1923. The basement smelled of earth and wine and time. Row after row of bottles stretched into the shadows, organized by region and vintage, a collection worth millions that Vincent guarded like a dragon hoarding gold. Dante navigated through the racks with the confidence of someone who had been down here before, though not recently. At the far wall, he stopped. Here. The wine rack looked like all the others. Bordeaux from the 50s and 60s, bottles thick with dust, labels faded but still legible. Maya ran her hands along the frame, feeling for irregularities. There, a slight gap between the wood and the wall. She pressed and something clicked. The entire rack swung outward on hidden hinges, revealing a steel door set into the foundation. 2 keyholes, one above the other. Dante inserted his key in the top lock. Maya used Father Michael's key in the bottom. They turned simultaneously, and the mechanism engaged with a sound like bones breaking. The door opened into a small room, maybe 8 feet by 8, carved from the bedrock Seattle was built on. Inside, filing cabinets lined 3 walls. A small desk occupied the center, and on that desk, a banker's box sealed with tape that had yellowed with age. Dante opened the box while Maya examined the filing cabinets. The box contained ledgers, the old-fashioned kind, bound in leather, filled with handwritten entries in Don Moretti's careful script. Dates, names, amounts. Transactions recorded with the precision of a man who understood that documentation was both weapon and liability. Maya pulled open the first filing cabinet drawer and found photographs. Hundreds of them. Don Moretti shaking hands with politicians, with police chiefs, with federal judges and city councilmen, and men whose faces Maya recognized from FBI most wanted lists. A visual record of corruption spanning 3 decades. My God. Dante's voice was hollow. He held up one of the ledgers, open to a page from 1995. This is everything, every payoff, every bribe. Every deal my father made with cartels and Russians and Chinese triads. If this gets out, it will bring down half the government officials in Washington state. That is the point. Maya was photographing pages with her phone, the camera's flash illuminating sins in stark clarity. Sokolov wants leverage. Your father built a blackmail library. Whoever controls these ledgers controls everyone they implicate. And we are going to give them to him. No, we are going to make him think we are giving them to him. While Agent Torres and the FBI prepare to take down everyone in these files simultaneously. Politicians, mobsters, all of them. One coordinated strike. Dante set down the ledger he was holding and looked at Maya directly. You understand that includes my family. These ledgers will put people I know in prison. People who were loyal to my father. People who are loyal to me. People who chose to profit from suffering. Yes, I understand that. And you are asking me to betray them. I am asking you to choose between protecting criminals and protecting innocents. Between being your father's own and being the man you want Sophia to remember. The name landed like it was meant to, a reminder of what was at stake beyond pride and legacy. Dante closed his eyes, and Maya could see the war happening behind his eyelids. Every choice had consequences. This choice had consequences that would ripple through decades. When he opened his eyes again, something had changed. The last vestiges of the mob boss had been stripped away, leaving only the man, flawed, frightened, but willing to pay the price for doing what was right. Photograph everything. We have 4 hours until sunrise. That gives us time to copy the files and get them to Torres before Sokolov realizes what we are doing. They worked in synchronized silence, Maya photographing while Dante organized the ledgers chronologically. 1995 was the critical year, but the files went back to 1987 and forward to 2023. Don Moretti had kept records until the day he died, documenting his own corruption with the thoroughness of a man who believed documentation was immortality. 3 hours later, they had everything. Thousands of photographs, gigabytes of evidence, enough to dismantle the criminal infrastructure of the Pacific Northwest and expose the corrupt officials who had enabled it. Maya uploaded the files to an encrypted cloud server, then sent the access codes to Agent Torres with a message. 24 hours. That was how long Torres had to build her case, coordinate with other agencies, and prepare for simultaneous raids. 24 hours before they handed the physical ledgers to Sokolov and triggered the trap. They emerged from the basement as dawn began to paint the sky gray. Outside, Seattle was waking up, delivery trucks rumbling through rain-slicked streets. Early commuters hunched under umbrellas. The city going about its business, unaware that the foundations of its power structure were about to shift. Dante locked the door behind them and they stood for a moment in the empty restaurant, surrounded by the aftermath of violence and the weight of what they had just done. There is no going back from this. His voice was quiet but certain. No, there is not. When this is over, assuming we survive, I will likely go to prison. The ledgers implicate me in things I did before I tried to go legitimate. Money laundering, racketeering. I can probably negotiate a deal, but prison time is inevitable. I know. Sophia will lose another father figure. Isabella will lose her brother-in-law. Father Michael will have to explain to an 8-year-old why the uncle she loves is behind bars. I know that too. Dante turned to face her fully, and in the gray dawn light he looked older than 36. He looked like a man who had lived several lifetimes in a single night. Why are you doing this? You could take the evidence and disappear. Save your mother. Let me deal with the consequences of my father's sins. Maya thought about the question, about the girl she had been at 16, waiting for a father who would never come home, about the woman she had become, driven by rage and grief and the desperate need to make his death mean something, about the moment in the hospital when she had realized that revenge was just another prison and the only way to be free was to let it go. Because my father spent his last breath trying to do the right thing, and I am tired of letting his death be for nothing. This is how we honor him, by finishing what he started, by breaking the cycle. Something passed between them in that moment, a recognition that went deeper than words. They were both orphans of violence, trying to build something clean from the wreckage their fathers had left. They were both terrified of failing, and they were both willing to risk everything for the chance to succeed. Dante reached out and took her hand, his fingers lacing through hers. The touch was electric, charged with everything they had not said and could not say until this was over. If it was ever over. When we get Elena back, when this is finished, I want to take you to dinner. A real dinner. Not as a mob boss and a waitress, just as two people who survived something terrible and want to see if there is something after survival. Maya felt her throat tighten. I would like that. Good. Then we have a reason to make sure we both live through the next 24 hours. His phone buzzed. A text from Agent Torres. The trap was set. Pier 54, Warehouse 4, 6 p.m. tonight. Sokolov would be there with Elena. FB would be in position by 5. All they had to do was show up with the ledgers and keep Sokolov talking for 30 minutes while the raid team moved into position. 30 minutes. It sounded simple. It would be the longest 30 minutes of their lives. Pier 54 smelled of salt and diesel and the particular rot that accumulated where ocean met industry. The warehouse was massive, a relic from when Seattle's economy ran on timber and shipping instead of software and coffee. Inside, shipping containers were stacked like building blocks, creating a maze of steel corridors perfect for ambushes. Nikolai Sokolov had chosen his battleground well. Maya and Dante arrived at 5:45, giving them 15 minutes to survey the space before the meeting. They came alone, as instructed, no bodyguards, no backup, just two people carrying a banker's box full of ledgers that could topple governments. The FBI was supposed to be in position by now, hidden in the containers and on the catwalks above, waiting for the signal. But as Maya scanned the warehouse, she saw no sign of them. Either they were very good at hiding or something had gone wrong. You feel that? Dante's voice was low. Feel what? Like we walked into a trap inside a trap. Before Maya could respond, lights blazed to life, flooding the warehouse floor with harsh illumination. In the center of the space, a single chair sat under a spotlight. Elena Reynolds was tied to it, head down, silver hair hanging across her face. She was not moving. Maya's heart stopped, then restarted with a surge of adrenaline that made her hands shake. She started forward, but Dante caught her arm. Wait, this is too easy. That is my mother. I know, but we do this smart or we do not do it at all. A slow clap echoed through the warehouse. Nikolai Sokolov emerged from behind a container, flanked by armed men. 6 of them. No, 8. All carrying assault rifles. All pointed in their direction. He looked exactly like his photograph. Aged 20 years, but still recognizable. Expensive suit, cold eyes. The kind of smile that suggested he was enjoying this far more than he should. Mr. Moretti, Miss Reynolds, so pleased you could join us. His accent was thicker than in the video, stress bringing out the Moscow in his vowels. You brought what I asked for? Dante held up the banker's box. The 1995 ledgers. Everything you wanted. Now let Elena go. Of course. Of course. But first we must verify that these are genuine, you understand. Trust is in short supply these days. He snapped his fingers and one of his men approached to take the box. Maya watched the exchange, her tactical mind cataloging details. 8 gunmen visible, probably more in the shadows. Elena still had not moved. The FBI should have made their move by now. Something was very wrong. The man with the box carried it to Sokolov, who opened it and began flipping through the ledgers with the casual interest of someone browsing a bookstore. After a moment, he nodded. These appear authentic. Don Moretti's handwriting, his signature, very good indeed. He closed the box and looked up at them. Now, before I release your dear mother, I think we should discuss what happens next. That was not part of the deal. Dante's voice carried warning. The deal was your father's ledgers for Elena's life. I am honoring that deal. But there are other matters to address, such as the unfortunate fact that you have been working with the FBI to set a trap for me tonight. Ice crystallized in Maya's stomach. He knew. Somehow he knew. Sokolov's smile widened. Did you think I would not notice federal agents moving into position around my meeting? Did you think I was stupid enough to come here without insurance? Your Agent Torres is currently in FBI custody herself. Arrested 20 minutes ago on charges of corruption. It seems she has been on my payroll for 3 years. Convenient, yes? The floor seemed to drop away beneath Maya's feet. Torres was compromised. The FBI raid was canceled. They were alone in a warehouse with a Russian mobster and 8 armed men and no backup coming. Now, Sokolov clasped his hands together like a professor about to give a lecture. Let me tell you what is really going to happen. You are going to walk out of here, both of you. I will keep the ledgers and Elena, and you will spend the rest of your very short lives knowing that you failed. That despite all your clever planning and noble intentions, you achieved nothing except ensuring that I now have the leverage to control this entire region. No, the word came from Elena. She had lifted her head and her eyes were clear, lucid, focused with the intensity of someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. You will not win, Nikolai, because you made the same mistake you always make. You underestimated the people you consider beneath you. Her hands moved, and the ropes that had been binding her fell away. They had not been tied. She had been holding them. In one smooth motion, Elena Reynolds rose from the chair and drove her elbow into the solar plexus of the nearest gunman. The man folded. She took his rifle before he hit the ground, spun, and put 3 rounds into the lights overhead. Darkness crashed down like a curtain. Maya moved on instinct, her father's training overriding conscious thought. She grabbed Dante and pulled him left, away from where they had been standing when the lights went out. Automatic weapons fire tore through the space they had just vacated, muzzle flashes strobing in the dark like lightning. Elena's voice cut through the chaos, strong and clear, and nothing like the confused Alzheimer's patient Maya had visited in the nursing home. Behind the blue container! Move! They moved. Maya leading, Dante following, both of them running in a crouch while bullets sparked off steel around them. Behind the blue container, they found Elena waiting. The stolen rifle in her hands, her expression calm. Mom, Maya's voice cracked. Later, right now, we fight. Elena tossed the rifle to Dante and pulled a Glock from somewhere in her clothing. I counted 8 men, 3 down, 5 left, plus Nikolai, who will not fight but will definitely run. You have been faking the Alzheimer's. Not entirely, it is getting worse, but I have been exaggerating for the last 6 months. Needed Nikolai to think I was helpless. Needed him to get arrogant. She chambered around. Your father taught me to shoot too, Maya, before you were born, before everything went wrong. There was no time to process this revelation. One of Sokolov's men appeared around the corner of the container, and Elena shot him twice in the chest before he could raise his weapon. She moved like she was 30 years younger, like the State Department training had never left her muscles. The ledgers. Dante was checking his rifle, counting rounds. We cannot let him escape with them. He will not. Elena's smile was grim. Because those are not the real ledgers. What? I switched them 2 days ago. The night before the shooting, I had been tracking Sokolov's movements for months. When I learned he was planning something at the Gilded Lily, I knew the ledgers would be his target. So I created convincing forgeries and moved the real ones to someone Sokolov does not own. A federal prosecutor I worked with decades ago. Someone who owes me. The ledgers in that box are convincing forgeries. Good enough to fool a quick examination, not good enough to hold up under scrutiny. Maya stared at her mother, seeing her clearly for the first time in a decade. Not a victim, not a patient, a spy, an operator, a woman who had been playing a long game while everyone else thought she had forgotten the rules. Where are the real ledgers? Already in FBI hands, delivered to someone above Torres's pay grade, someone Nikolai does not own. The raids happen tonight regardless of what happens here. More gunfire. Closer this time, they were being flanked. Elena pointed to a catwalk above them. High ground. Go. I will cover. Mom, you cannot. I have been doing this since before you were born, baby girl. Trust me, I know what I am doing. Maya hesitated for one heartbeat, then made the choice her father would have wanted. She trusted. She ran for the catwalk stairs, Dante beside her, while Elena laid down covering fire with the precision of someone who had done this before and remembered every lesson. They reached the catwalk and gained the high ground just as Sokolov made his break for the exit. He was running, the banker's box under his arm, 2 of his remaining men providing cover. Maya raised her Glock, sighted on his retreating back, and felt her finger tighten on the trigger. One shot. She could end this. Revenge for her father. Justice for everyone Sokolov had hurt. But her father's voice was in her head. Love conquers all. Forgive yourself. She shifted her aim 6 inches right and fired. The bullet took Sokolov in the shoulder, spinning him around, making him drop the box. Not a kill shot, a stopping shot, the kind that left him alive to face justice. He went down screaming, and his men froze, caught between protecting him and protecting themselves. That moment of hesitation was all Elena needed. She emerged from cover and put rounds into the ground at their feet. Drop the weapons or the next shots are higher. They dropped the weapons. Sirens wailed in the distance. Real FBI this time, the uncorrupted ones Elena had contacted. Flashing lights painted the warehouse walls red and blue. It was over. Maya lowered her weapon and felt the adrenaline drain out of her, leaving her hollow and shaking. Dante's hand found hers in the dark, and she held on like he was the only solid thing in a world that had just turned inside out. Below them, Elena Reynolds stood over Nikolai Sokolov, the Glock steady in her hands, and when she spoke, her voice carried 30 years of waiting. You sent me proof afterward. Photos of his body. Audio of Marcus pulling the trigger. You wanted me to know exactly how he died and who you forced to do it. You wanted me to carry that image forever. You made me hide and pretend and lose myself piece by piece. You thought you broke me, but you just made me patient. She stepped back as FBI agents swarmed into the warehouse. Patience is what separates survivors from corpses, Nikolai. David taught me that, and now you get to learn it in a cell for the rest of your life. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in the ruins of the Gilded Lily and watched the construction crew begin the renovation. The restaurant would reopen in 6 months, transformed. A nonprofit now, the profits going to a foundation named for 2 men who had tried to do the right thing and paid for it with their lives. The Reynolds Moretti Foundation for families affected by violence. Dante had negotiated his deal. 18 months in a minimum security facility, then probation. His testimony against the corrupt officials in his father's ledgers had bought him leniency. Marcus Vale had disappeared the night he left the hospital. The FBI found no trace. Some whispered he had fled to South America. Others said he made his own deal with prosecutors, trading testimony for witness protection and a new face. Maya chose to believe he was still alive somewhere, carrying David Reynolds' last words like chains. She did not forgive him, but she understood that some prisons had no walls, and guilt was the cruelest sentence of all. In a way, he was serving a longer term than Dante would ever face. Sophia would live with Isabella and Father Michael while he served his time. The little girl was healing, slowly, learning that family was more than blood and home was more than a place. Lena was in treatment now, real treatment, her Alzheimer's managed with medication and therapy. The disease was progressing, but slower than the doctors had feared. She had good days and bad days. On the good days, she told Maya stories about David Reynolds that Maya had never heard. About the man her father had been before violence and secrets had claimed him. About the life they could have had if choices had been different. Maya felt arms wrap around her waist from behind, and she leaned back into Dante's warmth. They had 3 more months before he surrendered himself to federal custody. 3 months to build something that could survive distance and time, and all the obstacles that stood between them and anything resembling a normal life. Nervous? His breath was warm against her ear. Terrified. Good, me too. She turned in his arms and looked up at him. The man who had been raised to be a monster and had chosen to be something else. The man who had sacrificed everything because an 8-year-old girl deserved better than the legacy of fear he had inherited. I will wait. The words came out fierce, certain. However long it takes, I will wait. That is a long time to put your life on hold. My life has been on hold for 10 years. 18 months is nothing. He kissed her then, gentle and deep, and it tasted like promise and goodbye and hello all at once. When they pulled apart, his forehead rested against hers, and they stood like that for a long moment, breathing each other's air, storing up memories against the separation to come. Your father was right. Dante's voice was barely a whisper. Love does conquer all, not because it makes things easy, but because it makes hard things worth doing. Maya thought about David Reynolds dying in Tijuana sand and Elena Reynolds surviving 30 years of hell for the chance to see justice done. She thought about Dante choosing honor over empire and Sophia learning to smile again and all the small victories that accumulated into something that looked like redemption. Yeah, she held him tighter. It does. In the street outside, Seattle went about its business. The rain fell. The city breathed. And somewhere, invisibly, the cycle was breaking. The pattern was shifting. The future was being written by people who refused to repeat the past. The lily was blooming, and this time it would not be drowned in blood. This time it would grow.